Welcome everyone to today's webinar. We'll get started shortly. Good morning, everyone. How's everybody doing today? We're going to get started in just another minute. We want to give people an opportunity to join. All right. I think it's safe to get started. Well, welcome everyone to our webinar, Seasons Change, Managing Mental Health During the Holidays. My name is Jabril. I'm one of the referral specialists for 877, All GA Kids, a program of quality care for children. I'd like to introduce you to today's moderator, Dr. Vaseem. Dr. Vazan, I'm so sorry.
Hello, I am Dr. Vessan Tinsley, and I'm one of the board members for Quality Care for Children. As a retired public school administrator, I often saw firsthand the impact of seasonal change on student engagement, behavior, attendance, and overall family dynamics. Sharing support strategies to help families and students to succeed remains my passion. I'm so happy to be here with you today. Today's webinar topic, Seasons Change, Managing Mental Health During the Holidays, is brought to you today by our leading corporate sponsor, Carter's. For over 10 years, their support has helped us provide information and resources for families. Are you searching for childcare? Well, look no further. Call 877 All Georgia Kids for childcare, pre-K or after-school programs anywhere in Georgia. Our talented team of experts will help you find the care you need and identify resources just for you. Their free service is 877 All GA Kids or 877 255 4254. Also, check out our website for more information. And if you're watching this later on YouTube, go ahead and like and subscribe. If you're interested in learning more about what we're doing, please click on that notification bell as well, so you'll never miss out on another Parent Power webinar. Thank you for joining us today for this special webinar tailored to parents navigating the unique challenges of seasonal depression. As the colder months approach and the days grow shorter, many of us may notice shifts in our mood and energy levels. For parents, balancing these changes while caring for young children can be especially difficult. That's why we're here today, to provide practical ideas and support you during this time. Let's get started. At this time, I would like to introduce you to our fabulous panelists. Melissa Bauman Fletcher is a licensed marriage and family therapist and is the vice president of school-based mental health at Chris 180. Yaron Brown is a solo practitioner and co-founder of Relational Grown and Wellness Institute, located in Gwinnett County. I thank you all for joining us to share your insight today on this important topic. We're going to start off with a chat with our panelists about seasonal depression and later have them answer your questions. So remember, leave your questions in the Q&A section, not the chat. Let's start with Yaron. Yaron, can you tell us what seasonal affective disorder, also known as SAD, is?
So, thank you for having me. I appreciate Quality Care for Children for allowing me this opportunity to participate in this very important discussion on seasonal depression and just mental health in general. And I thank you for being the moderator, Dr. Van Zandt. So, seasonal affective disorder is a form of depression. And so it's characterized very specifically. What I don't want the participants to believe is that because they have some winter blues, that means they have seasonal depression, right? There are specific criteria that are necessary in order for us to identify that. And I want to say that because having a level of sadness or being sad is a normal emotion for humans to have. When it becomes SAD, we are looking at specific criteria that happen, right? It is presumed that because of the lack of light and or access to light and activeness that we typically have outside, that there may be some chemical changes that take place in the brain, which then may cause that to exist. But it's just theorized. We're still working on knowing whether or not that's actually the case or not. But specifically, you can look to the symptoms of depression, things such as persistent sadness, but it has to be within a seasonal time frame, right? So that 2 to 4 month window when you're going from fall to winter, there even is a such thing as a summer pattern of SAD. So you're talking about feeling of hopelessness, overeating, oversleeping or undersleeping, losing social contact with others, having a sense of restlessness or agitation, decreased energy levels. All these things and more can be signs of having SAD, right? But within that, they don't have to all meet the depressive symptoms. There could be things that you may experience that may not be under that umbrella, or you may not have all of those criteria.
And so, how do you think seasonal affective disorder can affect one's daily routine or family dynamics?
So, seasonal depression, as it's been studied, normally starts off in adulthood, and it normally doesn't affect it rarely affects individuals under 20 years old. It's also presumed that it is mostly women are mostly affected. But what we also see is that that may not be the case as well, because men or fathers can be affected as well. We just we don't go seek help, right? That's our problem as men. We don't go seek help. And so we don't identify with our mental health as often as we should. How that can affect the interaction in the home is that our moods and our behavior can trickle down into our children and disrupt the interaction that takes place between a parent and child, but also limits the connections that we could have with our community. And so in that, it can directly impact how we relate to each other and activities and things that we do to bring about a sense of attachment and connection within the relationship with our children and our family members at large.
Thank you for that. Melissa, what daily routines do you think are most effective for maintaining emotional stability during the seasonal transitions?
I love this question. I'm a big routines person. I think first acknowledging that as the seasons change, as the light decreases outside, as our weather changes, our routines change. Um, I think we really, as human beings, kind of thrive on consistency. And so I'll just go ahead and say it for me. Sometimes when that daylight savings time happens, you wake up and it's still super dark outside, but you have to get your day going anyways. Sometimes we just have to kind of fake it till we make it. And getting in that consistent routine can help us kind of find the motivation to get up and get the day started. So establishing a morning routine, I think, is a really great way to kind of kick your day off in a way that might help you feel better and be intentional about doing that. So maybe that's in the morning. You put on some music while you're getting ready, or you do something to kind of get up and get moving. Making sure that you are also kind of focusing on balance, making sure that you're not just attending to, kind of mental health needs, but also your physical health, and making sure that you're taking care of your body. So, making sure that you are, getting that nutrition in the morning and staying hydrated. Finding ways to incorporate physical activity in your day. That no one's saying you have to run a marathon every day, but find ways to get up and get moving, and get your body active, because we know that as the seasons change, we become less active when we're in the house more. We're not outside with the cold weather changes, the sun's going down earlier. And making sure also that you're really intentional about sleep. I think I mentioned I'm a big routines person. Having a consistent sleep schedule, not just for your kids, but for you as well, and trying to maintain that helps our bodies and our circadian rhythm kind of stay on track, even though the changes in lights and the changes in seasons outside can impact our bodies, whether we know it or not. As much as, my go-to sometimes on those days is an extra cup of coffee. Research has shown that if we can limit sugar and limit caffeine, that actually helps us kind of navigate these changes better. And I think definitely we can't underestimate the importance of social connection and social interaction. A lot of times, when it's cold outside, when it's dark, we don't want to engage, we don't want to go out and do things. So finding other ways to stay connected with your support system, and lean on them for support if you need. And lastly, I think giving yourself some grace and staying flexible and adaptable. Having some sort of routine is great, but also, we may not be feeling 100% today, and that's okay. And so just finding ways to maybe you build in a little extra time for those regular tasks, or acknowledge maybe today I have a plan A and a backup plan if things don't go to plan. And the beautiful thing about a routine is that we can start again tomorrow.
That is the truth. I tell you, you can start over again. You're always able to do that. So, Melissa, how do indoor activities help counter the effects of seasonal depression in both parents and children? And then, if you're able to, if you can you share any specific examples of what this might look like?
Absolutely. So I think as Yaron was kind of talking about some of the symptoms that we might see with seasonal affective disorder, or even just kind of those seasonal blues that maybe don't quite meet that criteria, I think being intentional, one, about forming routines that kind of counteract some of those symptoms, but also getting creative with indoor activities, finding ways in the house to foster connection. Not just with your children and people inside your home, but also maybe those extended family members, friends, that aren't present with you every day. And so it's a great opportunity to get creative, try something new. Maybe you look at a new hobby that you can do inside the house, exploring new interests. um, and it's also a good opportunity with kids to get physical. Maybe you're doing indoor obstacle courses. Maybe you're going to do try yoga together as a family, or any number of activities that you can do inside, that get us up and active, stimulate us not just physically but mentally. And it's also a great opportunity to bond with each other and, have some fun, try new things, learn something new. Especially as, again, as the seasons change, our energy levels tend to decrease. It's a great opportunity to kind of make use of the resources and the time that we have. So that might look like together, maybe we're gonna, research a new recipe and we're gonna prepare dinner together this week, or we're gonna try a new, cookie recipe over the weekend. One thing that I think um, was something that I discovered, throughout the pandemic was there's a lot of free like online tours for museums, or you can virtually travel to other places. So there's a lot of ways to expand your horizons and your kids' horizons while in the comfort of your own home. So it's a great opportunity to just get creative, see what's out there. And ask your kids something they're interested in. And I'm sure that there's some way that we can incorporate that, in an indoor activity.
Thank you. And now, Yaron, I want to ask you a question. What are some healthy habits you can adopt to create that positive atmosphere at home, even when feeling the effects of seasonal depression?
So I absolutely love what Melissa said. Scheduling routine is important. Even within that scheduling routine, preparation, right? If you don't know that you have a seasonal affective disorder, then that's one thing. But if you know that you get this way around these seasons, planning in advance is so important, or can be so important, to prepare for that connection. A dawn stimulator is also, or simulator is also useful, where you can actually put a device in your home and it simulates the rising of the sun. Um, you can also work on, like Melissa said, doing exercise, right? And so what I want to be clear about is, it getting colder outside, or seasons are changing, doesn't mean that we can't go out, right? It just means that we just have less light. And so even though it's cold, we can still go outside of the home, because there's something to be said for obtaining fresh air, right? There's a neurological connection that takes place when we are breathing in natural air, and we can become rejuvenated by that experience. And it doesn't have to be a long time. It could be less than 5 minutes outside, right? It could be taking off your shoes and socks and grounding yourself to the ground, whether you're standing on concrete or you are standing on grass. There is something to be said for our feet touching something natural. And so we can ground ourselves in that experience. Another thing that we could do is, we can take this time to create a level of mindfulness in our home, right? To connect to those emotions and challenging experiences and become aware of them without judgment. So there are also things that we can do. And if it gets to an extreme place, then we may need to go see a medical professional and become diagnosed, and get a diagnosis, right? And then get on an antidepressant medication for that period of time, right? That doesn't mean you have to take it forever. It just means you may need to take that medication within that seasonal period. And so those are a lot of different things that we can do, and including social networking. If you don't have one, creating one, right? Oftentimes, our children are going to um, respond to our emotional gauges, right? Because they're trying to attach to us in a specific way. They're trying to receive those connections from us in a specific way. The more we can connect with them, the more likely they are to not feel the effects of that season as great.
Thank you so much. Melissa, I want to ask you a question. How do you balance your own emotional needs with the needs of your children during these challenging seasonal periods?
You for asking that question. Um, I feel like this is always a balancing act, right? First of all, you can't, as we say, pour from an empty cup. So if you're not acknowledging and taking care of your own emotional needs, we don't have as much to give others. We can't be as present as we might want to be. And so I think just being intentional about um, acknowledging how you're feeling. I love to do kind of a daily check in with myself and just see, where am I at? Am I at my baseline? Am I feeling really great today? Do I maybe need to be a little bit more intentional about how I spend my time today, and how I take care of myself so I can show up for others? And so I think, prioritizing self care and figuring out what that looks like for you. It doesn't have to be, a big fancy ordeal. It can be little moments throughout your day that you take for yourself, to just check in, have a mindful moment, see where you're at, so that you can maybe make some small adjustments so that you can respond to situations, in the way that you would like to, and be present, for your partner, for your kids, at work, whatever you're doing, that day. And so I think a big part of that, after you acknowledge, is, to respond and communicate those things. So I love the idea of, modeling, for our kids, communicating how we're feeling. I think sometimes, we want to, maybe not acknowledge those things. We want to be the best version of ourselves, for our kids, which sometimes might not be where we're really at. And so it's okay to say, I'm feeling really tired today. I just need a moment. I'm wondering if maybe you're feeling the same way. And you can engage, in an, activity together, a self care activity, a mindfulness activity, a quiet activity, to kind of help you, reset. And I think there's a bonding aspect of being able to acknowledge that and do that together. Um, and also, I think setting realistic expectations for yourself. Again, we acknowledged, not every day. Maybe you're feeling 100%. You might have to, adapt your routine. You might have to try some things differently. I love what Yaron said about being intentional and planning ahead, and maybe building in for those opportunities where you may not, feel, up to doing everything at 100% speed like you usually do. Um, and as much as it can be a challenge, I think sometimes reserving a little bit of me time where you can find it, is a really great way to, maybe reset emotionally, and take care of yourself.
Yaron, you have something you'd like to add to that?
Yes, and I love what Melissa said about sharing how we're feeling. What I want to clarify for our parents on here is that we want to share how we feel. We don't want our children to hold our feelings for us, right? So we don't want to hold them responsible for how we are feeling and having them try and not do something or not be who they desire to be in order to prevent us from feeling or try and prevent us from feeling a certain way. That's where that's the line where it becomes unhealthy, right? Sharing how you're feeling and saying, hey, how are you feeling or what's going on, like Melissa said, is different from I'm feeling this way, and if you do X, Y, or Z, I'm going to feel even so and so, so and so, right? So there's a distinction between sharing your feelings and having your children hold your feeling. So I just wanted to clarify that because sometimes as parents we can blur that line. Me included. Me included.
And thank you for that clarification. That sounds like that will be the next webinar that we need to plan, because I believe there's some healthy discussion that goes along with that topic as well. So thank you for that clarification, and thank you for those points that you shared. All right, so now we're going to move into some scenarios, and we're going to ask our panelists some questions. And these are questions that were provided by parents who signed up to participate in the webinar. So the first one: I'm a teacher, and I noticed that several children in my class, including one who's usually very active and engaged, has become more withdrawn and irritable since the day started getting shorter. The student is also having trouble focusing and is more easily upset. What signs should I look for to determine if seasonal changes are affecting the children? And how can I involve parents in recognizing these signs early on?
I think
Either
this
one,
is
you are ready, you're able to jump in.
Yeah, I love this question. I work in schools, and so this is something that, we talk with teachers about regularly. And so, first, I think just being observant, which it sounds like the person that submitted this question is already noticing some changes. So, as teachers, our teachers spend so much time, with our kids, really get to know them and kind of, what their norm is, or how they usually show up in class. And so, I think observing that there are some changes, and maybe making note of what those changes are and how, it's differing from how this kiddo usually presents in class. And I think just getting curious around, is there a pattern? Are there certain times of day that these things are happening? Are there certain activities? Maybe they used to really love, going to recess, and now they ask to sit in the classroom instead. Maybe they're really engaged, and now they're having a hard time really focusing, and on tasks that require a lot of attention to detail or sustained attention. Sometimes what we see a lot is kids sleeping in class that are normally very alert and awake and engaged, and the first to raise their hand. And so I think once you're noticing those changes, I love that they asked how can they involve parents, because that's, for me, is the next step. I'm going to call a parent and say, I'm noticing some of these things, and I'm wondering if you're seeing any of these same things happening at home, and maybe get a little more context. How long have these things been happening? Is it a recent change? Does it coincide with, changing of the seasons? And just figure out what's going on at school, what's going on at home, and explaining to parents that some of these things are, normal changes that our kids experience as the days get shorter. And maybe that looks like kind of educating them on what they might see and how we can help support them through these seasonal changes. And so, as a teacher, that might look like in your classroom, providing more opportunities for natural light and sunlight. Maybe that is, taking more frequent brain breaks. We're getting up and walking around. We're finding ways to get active and engaged, and kind of normalizing and having a sense of flexibility if you are seeing some of these changes and you notice that some of your students, might be struggling. I love the opportunity to incorporate mindfulness in our classrooms. And as we talked about previously, the same way that it's important for us as parents to acknowledge our feelings, giving our students and our kids the opportunity to learn some of that emotional vocabulary and give them the opportunity to check in with themselves, see how they're feeling, and they can communicate that to us. We're really big advocates for teaching kids to be able to advocate for what they need. And if they don't know what that might be, giving them some age appropriate options of what would help you right now. Do you need 10 minutes in the quiet corner to reset? Do you need to put your head down for 10 minutes? Do you need to get up and walk around? What does that look like for each student? And parents know their children best, and so I think engaging them in some of that discussion is a really critical piece.
Next scenario. I am a single father and I am struggling to maintain a consistent daily routine with my two children as the colder months begin. I've noticed that without regular outdoor activities, my children become more irritable and anxious. I'm also feeling overwhelmed and have little energy after work. What strategies can I implement to establish daily routines that promote emotional stability for both me and my children? How might outdoor play or light therapy help to improve our mood?
So the first thing I would tell this father to do is breathe, right? Really just before you do anything else, breathe, brother, breathe. Because the reality is that being overwhelmed can happen. And it's okay that you have that feeling. Question is, what do we want to do with that feeling that we have, right? We may not be able to achieve the outdoor activities that we desire, but this is prime time for you to build a deeper relationship with your children indoor. So what does that look like? That can look like we cook together. That can look like, can you give dad 5 minutes while I take this breath and let's do it together. Let's lay down on the floor. Let's be quiet together. Let's do some mindfulness together. And that's bonding time. But what you're also doing is teaching your kids how to reset at the same time. You are modeling the behavior that you want to see in them, which could potentially decrease the amount of irritability and anxiety they have because you're showing them how to deal with it. And you're showing them that you may be overwhelmed and this is how you deal with it. So you're modeling several different things at one time and helping in creating that. But it could be something just as fun as we're going to run out the door for 5 minutes with no shoes on, or 2 minutes and run back in, and I'm gonna time you and see who can get back the fastest, right? Let's hope the kids don't close the door and lock you out because you did something you weren't supposed to do as dad. But outside of that, that could be a great activity to do, right? We don't have to sit outside. We don't have to stand outside, or we could just stand in front of the light and just sit there, right? Or just breathe in air. Have them notice what air smells like. Is there a taste to it? Is there a feeling on the skin and the nose, right? Become very curious about those experiences, which can create those opportunities for connection. When we talk about light therapy, it is important to understand that vitamin D is crucial to our survival as human beings. And light brings that about. And it's just not, it's good for us because there's a chemical reaction that takes place when the sun hits the skin, right? Dopamine begins to be released and we begin to get this surge of energy and a level of refreshment. And so it's important for that to take place. So even if you get a light box, or we talked about the Dawn simulator, those things are very important. It may benefit you to consider changing the lights in your home based off the season. And so that may also be something that may be beneficial.
Healthy modeling. That's what I heard in there. Healthy modeling. Healthy modeling.
Absolutely.
Yes. All right, next scenario. I'm the mother of 3 children. I've been trying to keep my children entertained indoors as the weather turns colder. However, I feel mentally drained and find it hard to care for myself while managing their constant need for attention. What are some practical self-care routines I could introduce to balance my own well-being while caring for my children? How can indoor activities be used to create an enriching environment for my children during these months?
So I think
Yaron?
Melissa alluded to several of these earlier. So I'll repeat some of them. But even before I do that, what I want to say is you're not an entertainer, mom. You don't have to entertain your kids. Your presence is enough. You being with them and attuning to them in their presence is more than enough. The activities that you're doing is to build greater connection, not to entertain them. Our goal as parents is not to entertain our children, but to connect with them and build bonds. And so with that being said, if you've never been on a plane, if you get on a plane, the first thing they tell you is when cabin pressure decreases, the oxygen mask will drop down. If you have small children with you, put on your mask first, then put on theirs. So caring for yourself is so important before caring for them, because if you are not in a space to care for them, that's going to leak out onto them. And so we want to do that. So what does that mean to provide self-care? That means exercising. And that could be something that you do with the kids, right? And I'm not talking about being an Olympian. I'm not talking about being a track star. I'm talking about just doing basic things. Could be that you're planking and you say, how long can we each hold this? Let's get in a circle and let's see who can hold the plank the longest, right? Or can we do it for 10 seconds, right? I'm going to do a sit-up and I'm going to touch your hands and then you do a sit-up and touch mine, right? We can do activities to that degree. Having those social connections or relationships. If we have access to resource, going out to a museum. I know Fernbank, I know High Museum, they have free exhibits sometimes for families, right? Being able, if you have resource, to take some time off and have a babysitter and go have some fun. It's okay to have fun. Just because you're a parent don't mean that your fun time is over. If you have those resources, right? Building a support network, doing activities that connect you guys together and show a level of care, level of support for each other that's meaningful. Indoor activities you can do, like I said before with dad, do a cooking, right? This is a great time to change diets. Perfect time to change diets, right? So that you can begin to cook different things and try new things. Let's see if we like this. And then we can do something where we do like there's a guy named Gordon Ramsay and he does like Hell's Kitchen or something like that. And then we could all try and make a dish and then we rate the dish and see whose dish came out best, right? And we can have karaoke night in the house, right? And determining whose music who did the best, right? Or lip syncing, right? And so do things like that to support the connection between you two, but also your children will never forget those activities, and you're not entertaining them. You guys are having fun together and building relationship.
Great, great examples. Great examples. Okay, here's the next scenario. My partner and I have both been feeling the effects of seasonal depression, but we are determined to create a positive environment for our two young children. However, we often find ourselves losing patience and struggling to stay engaged with our kids. What healthy habits could we introduce to maintain a supportive atmosphere at home, even when we are feeling low? And how can we stay connected with our children in meaningful ways despite our challenges?
So I think a lot of this question also relates to some of the things that Yaron just talked about. And so I think there's a lot of ways to create meaningful connections without having to, really do extravagant things. Just being there and being present, and finding the time, setting aside the time to be intentional with how we engage with our kids is oftentimes enough. And so I think, um, you know, probably between both of these parents or partners, they're usually at 100%, but sometimes it's not 50-50. Maybe today I have 70% to contribute if you're feeling like you're at 30. And so sharing some of those responsibilities, and creating realistic expectations. If you are feeling like maybe you're not at your 50% today, or your 100% today that you're usually at, communicating those needs with your partner. So checking in with yourself is important, but also regularly checking in and communicating with your partner is so important, to just acknowledge how you're feeling, and communicate where you're at and what you might need specifically for support for today, from your partner. And so going back to routines, I think having some consistency and kind of what day to day looks like can be really important for kids. Not to the minute, not every activity has to look the same, but it is, really a healthy routine for kids to kind of know what to expect out of their day. And so that might look like mixing things up or being a little bit flexible, as you are. Maybe finding creative ways to continue to meet those needs. So taking care of yourself, physically, making sure that you are getting the vitamins and nutrition that your body needs to give you the energy to keep going. Staying hydrated, I think, is something that we overlook a lot. But when we're dehydrated, it can affect our mood, and it can affect energy levels. Lots of things for daily functioning throughout the day, and those are great opportunities to engage your kids in those things as well. Um, I love the idea of doing self-care together. So, trying something new. If you have a morning meditation that really works for you, maybe share that with your partner. Maybe you engage in a fun, activity with your kids to kind of get your day started. And just acknowledging that, these ebbs and flows, not just in our mood, but in kind of our engagement, our energy level, those are really human normal things that happen day to day, and especially acknowledging that as seasons change we may see that a little bit more, and so giving yourself grace, and leaning on your village, right? Ask for support. It's important to, um, not just in this example with partners, but friends, family members, and maybe it is to the point where it might be a good time for you and your partner to get in touch with a mental health professional if that's something that you feel like would benefit you.
Thank you. And we have two more scenarios. My husband and I have started feeling the effects of seasonal depression and we want to create a better home atmosphere. We have noticed that our child has been spending more time alone and seems less interested in family activities. What strategies can we use to engage our child in fun, enriching activities to foster a sense of connection? And how can we ensure that our child feels supported during this seasonal transition? Yaron, I'm going to throw that one your way.
I'm back on. I apologize. The internet went out for me.
Did you hear the scenario, or do you need me to read it again?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
So specifically, with the husband and wife, right? We want to make sure that we're connected, right? We want to make sure that we're on the same page. We want to understand what we are going through and sharing those experiences with each other, right? I think the vulnerability sometimes is oftentimes missing as husband and wife, because we want to stay strong for the other person, right? We want to, as the husband or man, socially, we want to be the protector, right? As the mother or woman, we want to make sure that we have everything together in the home, right? And if neither one of us okay, then those roles really don't mean anything, right? Oftentimes our children can feel when we are not okay. And so oftentimes what they're going to do is they're going to self-regulate, and they're going to isolate themselves because they may feel like that they are the cause of the disconnection or disruption, right? Because we haven't told them anything different. So they are going to separate themselves. A great activity that I didn't identify also is aromatherapy, right? Very simple, getting a diffuser and saying, hey, let's smell this scent. What do you feel, or what do you notice about yourself when you identify with this scent, right? And we can do that. That's a family activity that we can do. But the other thing is, we can have roundtables, right? And I know this activity can get very, very sticky, but we can play Uno, right? I know y'all want to fight when it comes to Uno, right? And we can allow the kids to make up the rules. Yes, they hit you with the draw 4 or 5 times, but that's just the way they like playing, right? And we can have those activities sitting down. We can all learn how to play chess together, or we could play checkers, right? We can do different things to engage them in this process. We don't have to, and it goes back to something Melissa said earlier. We don't always have to feel good to do something, right? Sometimes it may be important for us to work through that, not feeling at our best, in order to give the kids something different. And we can acknowledge that I'm feeling sad and you are important enough for us to do this activity.
Thank you. So I want to make sure that I'm clear. I heard you say that I can change the rules to Uno, especially where draw 4 comes in, because that's the one that always gets me. I heard you say that, Yaron. I heard you.
Yeah, no, you can. The kids get the chance. No. The adults can't change the rules. The kid, because they go to school like my kids, and they have all these new rules, and I'm like, this is not how you play. Yes. You can load them all up, and then have all of them, and drop all of them on you, and yes, and so just in that situation, I'd be ready. I'd be ready to hurt them kids, jokingly, but saying that to say yes, they be trying to kill me.
Thank you. I just wanted to add some humor for the parents on the call that may have that same issue with draw 4 that I do. All right, here is another scenario. I've been feeling unusually tired and irritable since the weather changed. I've noticed that I am more impatient with my kids and my stress levels have increased, especially in the evenings. My child, who is usually cheerful, has started having frequent mood swings and difficulty sleeping. What steps can I take to recognize whether my child and I are experiencing seasonal depression? How might this affect our family dynamic if these symptoms are not addressed?
So the first thing I want to point out is that, going back to what I said earlier, it is okay that you are not feeling okay. And just because you are not feeling okay, it may not mean that you have seasonal depression. It may mean that something might have happened or something might have triggered that experience, right? So, for an example, this may be a time of the year where, because of financial resources, you may be stressed. It could be that somebody passed away and you have this recollection of them. So, really connecting with that noticing part of you to kind of define, what does that look like for me? Um, I'm impatient with my kids consistently, right? That's something that I got to work on. And I'm working on it because they're important to me. Kids can drive you to be impatient because we live in a society where we want it here and now, right? And so, and they want it here and now. And we want it here and now. And everybody ain't gonna get it here and now. So we have to figure out, well, what does that look like? When our stress level increases, we begin to start dumping more cortisol into our systems, right? Which then affects how we connect and relate to certain things. And it creates this level, potentially creates this level of hypervigilance that we have, which can create the level of impatience that we have. So stress could cause impatience to grow. So it's important to understand that. We also have to notice if we have a precondition of what we are expecting our children to be like, or who they are, or what they need to be doing, or what's happening, instead of being in the moment and seeing them for who they are and seeing our situation for what it is, right? Oftentimes our stress levels are connected to a preconception of what should be happening next. And so if we are not intentional about understanding where we are in the moment, we can easily get caught up and go down a rabbit hole of what should be happening and how they should be behaving. And they don't even know, sometimes our kids don't even know that we stress, but they may knock over a glass and we like, I can't believe you knocked over that whole glass and spilled stuff on the floor. It wasn't their intent. They were going fast just like we go fast sometimes as adults, right? Our children are not little adults, they're kids, right? So they're not going to know everything. This is not their second time around the block. It's the first, right? They don't know what we know because they just trying to figure it out. Everything they doing is for the first time. It ain't second or third, right? And so we have to have a sense of empathy and compassion for them in this position, but we also need to care for ourselves. Being a parent is a full-time job. That doesn't mean that you don't have a moment to spend on you. You are important. You are vital to the success of your children. So not doing for you, in essence, doesn't allow them to do for themselves or allow you to do for them because you don't have anything. Melissa said it earlier, right? We can't, if the tank is empty, we're not going anywhere, right? And so if you don't even have a half a tank, you're not going anywhere. And so we have to fill that tank up by caring for ourselves. And so seasonal depression is a very real thing. So I don't want to minimize it. But what I do want to say is that you have options. And it's okay that you are not okay, but it's, what do I want to do with not being okay? Do I want to not be okay and fall into that space and not work through it? Or do I want to do something for myself and my family to be better during this time?
Wow. I mean, so much great information is being shared here today. And again, we thank you, panelists, for just the engagement. The QCC team needs your feedback. We're dropping a link in the chat for you to share your thoughts about today's program. So please take a moment and give us your input. Now, I will bring back Jabril, who will help us with questions that have been posed in the chat. Jabril?
Thank you so much, Dr. Fasim. So one of the questions that's listed in QA is, do you have to be diagnosed with SAD? And either of you could answer the questions.
Sure. So I'll answer. No, yes. So let me clarify something. We are great at self-diagnosing. Self-diagnosis doesn't mean that I'm diagnosed. I'm diagnosed with it. So yes, it's important to go to a professional, because we can have a day or a moment, and that doesn't mean that's 2 weeks of consistently having depressive symptoms, which is what's required in order to just be identified as having depression. But then specifically with seasonal depression, then we have to look at different criteria and find out how consistent this is going on, what the span of time is, and all those different elements. So yes, do not, and I'm gonna say this, do not become afraid of going to a mental health professional. Therapy is becoming more and more normalized. Being mentally healthy is becoming more and more normalized. It is better for you to go see someone to get help than to suffer in silence.
Thank you. And just to piggyback off of that same concept, when we identify that medications for certain conditions, for certain events that are short-lived, how do we develop coping skills until the medication takes effect?
I love this question. And I appreciate, one, if you're identifying that medication is necessary, that means that you've taken the first step for yourself to seek support. And I think that is an incredible first step. And I think in the meantime, this kind of period can be really challenging. So I don't want to minimize that while you are starting something new that will help you, that it might still be a struggle, day to day right now. And so I think really checking in with yourself to see um, what are the triggers for you, what is it that you need, what resources might help you to feel better in the meantime. And I think it's a great opportunity to really reflect on who you are, what you need, and get creative, try new things, right? The coping skills, I always refer to, kind of our coping skills toolbox. There's lots of different strategies that we have, and not all of them, work in every situation. And so try some different things, see what works, see what makes you feel better. One of my favorite analogies is, sometimes we want to throw all of our tools in a tornado, and that's not always helpful, right? So being intentional about what you're trying, giving yourself grace and understanding that it might not be an instant fix. And so just being intentional, acknowledging that you are trying to do something to make yourself feel better is really important. So there's always lists of coping skills you can try, different things, but really, what is missing? Where is it that you feel like you need a little extra boost, extra bump? Maybe that's more social connection. For me, if it's something that I know that I can't change right now, or I don't have, a lot of control over, my go-to is I need to, do something completely opposite and get my mind off of it. If I'm feeling really down, it might look like, as silly as it sounds, watching dog videos on YouTube or something, just to kind of, take your mind off of it, mix things up. Maybe it is going out and, being in nature, connecting to something or someone else. And so I think just, again, being intentional about trying and seeing what works, and stick with it until hopefully, that medication can come in and boost your serotonin levels to help your body be able to navigate these seasonal changes.
Those are some great answers. And another question that was posed were, what are some natural remedies that you could take as a supplemental thing to help with the seasonal depression? So I know you mentioned going outside, being intentional in that way, but what are those other natural remedies that we can keep in mind?
So what I also want to say related to that is to take your butt to therapy. That's another coping skill, right? Go to therapy because you may not be able to look on the internet for everything. And you have professionals that are there to help you, to support you in this process. As far as holistic things you can do, we addressed those earlier, like exercising, routine, things of that nature. I would not be okay with advising on supplements and stuff like that to take. You may want to speak with someone that may be more an expert in that area, or talk to your doctor about what things are okay and not okay for you to take during that process. But the things that we listed earlier, as far as having a routine, going outside, doing the dawn simulator, having a light box, changing your lights in your home, exercise, are all things that you could do in an effort to take care of yourself from a holistic way.
Thank you for that. Now, being a stay-at-home mom, how can we not get so caught up in the same routine? Because both of you mentioned routine being important, and it is, children thrive in that aspect, but it can become mundane. What do you suggest for that?
So that's a great question. And first, being a stay-at-home parent is one of the most thankless, the hardest jobs that you could do. So thank you for that. And I think just because we're talking about routine doesn't mean that it's, stringent, set in stone to the minute. You have a general outline of what, maybe things that you need to get done or things that you want to do, activities that you want to engage in, either, as an adult or with your children, and then finding some creative ways to mix it up. It doesn't have to look the same way every single day. I think sometimes just for our kids who often do thrive with structure and routine, communicating what it is that's going to happen that day. It doesn't have to be every Monday we do, this at 9, we do this at 10, we do this at 11. It can just be as simple as, asking them what do they want to do today. Maybe you have a set list of things that you need to get done. Is there some flexibility planning ahead to be able to mix it up and try new things? So I think any major changes in schedule, working with kids can be really important to just communicate so that they know what to expect, but you don't have to be stuck in this box every day, because it can become mundane, and oftentimes can do the exact opposite of what we're hoping that routine and structure will do.
Thank you. That was really a great way to put it. So another question, it seems like movies and social media make it seem like this is the most wonderful time of the year, to say, lack of better words. But with work, being a parent and all those things, your children's school asking for during this time, it can become hard to enjoy. How can you set realistic expectations for yourself, but also for your family during this time?
So part of this is not buying into the hype of social media and everything else, right? It's not allowing your kids to fall into this trap of what should be, and dealing with the reality of what is. You know what your capabilities and limitations are. You know what you're capable of and not capable of. And it's okay if certain things you're not able to do. It's okay. It's okay as a parent, right? And it's honoring that part of it, honoring that part of you that says, hey, I might not be able to do everything that I want to do at this point in time. And that doesn't mean you're a bad parent, right? Our goal as parents is not to be perfect. It's to do what we can to create stability, connection, and resource for our children.
Okay, for sure. And just, I think we have time for one more question. So if I'm a person who can't afford a mental professional at this time, what are some free resources that are available to help cope with feeling low and stressed out at this period?
That's a great question. I think, um, it- again, leaning on your village, just figuring out, checking in, what is it that you need? What is it that your family needs? I always encourage people to get connected with the resources that are local to them, because there's always help available. We just have to know where to look. And so, in regard to what we talked about with, like, school and needs for our kids around these times, or the holiday season, checking in with your kid's school, the counselor, the social worker, to see, are there resources available that can help you. Um, we talked a little bit earlier about, we love to Google everything and sometimes self diagnose. There are also a lot of really great resources on the internet. There's a lot of great ways, to forge connections with other parents, share resources. So, although sometimes social media can be a downward spiral sometimes if you're not feeling your best, there's also a lot of great resources out there for coping skills. There may be for those that are interested in seeking therapy but maybe don't have the resources to do so, I encourage you to, reach out. There are options for, sometimes really reduced fees, or free therapy resources. Sometimes employers have, employee assistance programs that can help with that as well. And so I think just really getting creative and searching for resources, but also you don't have to do it alone. So, you know, if you're leaning on your village, somebody in your family or a friend might have, a resource to share with you, if you um, are taking that step of vulnerability to share just where you are and what you need.
And we actually got one more question. I think we still have time. Just piggybacking off of this idea of resources. Um, you know, you spoke briefly about finances potentially being a reason why people can be down during this time of the year, but how can you support your children during this time when, from their perspective, other children aren't experiencing the same type of struggle in the way that one family may be? Like, we speak to our children and try to, not bring them into the adult conversation, but their children and their idea of what they want, how do we deal with that?
This is it's a great question. I think part of this is, and we're not all the same. Our situations aren't the same. And I think that to try and create opportunities for our kids to be like others and not understand and kind of connect with where they are, we're doing them a disservice. Because then that's when we start the process of trying to have them be like others or have the same thing as others, that only grows as they get older. And then that puts us as parents in a precarious situation because now we fed this monster that we can't keep up with. And so I think that we get into this idea of having, but if we begin to teach our children that having has no bearing on who they are, we that 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 having has no bearing on who they are, we began to start developing our children in a very unique and holistic way.
That's a very great point. But those are all the questions I have, Dr. Vazan, I'm so sorry.
No problem at all. Thank you, panelists. And I've been taking a few notes too. The educator in me believes in a recap. So I'm just going to share. We've had so many great strategies shared with us today on how to help families during this transitional period, the transitional seasons. And I heard breathe, just breathe, foster connections, establish routines, look at your diet, have outdoor activities, exercise, set realistic expectations, light therapy, rest, pay attention to your sleep patterns. Parents, acknowledge how you feel. Self care, seek mental health support if needed, and just give yourself grace. Powerful information shared here today. Thank you again, panelists. And I love the one that was stated. I think that might have been you, Yaron, not falling into the trap of media and social media during this time. I believe that could be a totally different webinar topic, and we'd be here for another 2 to 3 hours if we wanted to talk about that one. So we will not talk about it today, but just remember that as one of the strategies. Okay, Melissa and Yaron, again, thank you so much for what you shared. Can you just tell us a little bit about how they can find you and more about your organizations and any upcoming events you'd like to share?
Absolutely. So, Chris 180 helps children, adults, and families all over the metro Atlanta area with anything and everything mental health related. We have counseling center locations. We have therapists located in schools in 4 different counties along the metro area. Lots and lots of resources and supports. And so I wanted to share today one of the resources that we offer that I love most, which is Chris 180's blog. It's a really great resource on just some short, quick reads on a variety of mental health topics aimed at supporting children and families. And one of those that one of our wonderful therapists wrote recently was around navigating, stress around the holidays. So I hope that is helpful. Please visit us at chris180.org.
If you go to rgwinstitute.com, you will find resources related to families, individual therapy. I have a podcast called Resilient Kings for Men. If any of you all are interested, we try and do quarterly a panel discussion on something related to mental health and families. We are based out of Gwinnett County, but we see children, adults, and families all over the metro area and all through Georgia as well. So if you all need us, go to rgwinstitute.com and we'll be more than happy to support anything you need related to mental health.
Thank you for that. And to participants, here are some resources available to you. Feel free to take screenshots or write them down for you to review later. And also remember, a recording of this webinar will be sent out to all registrants afterwards. We want to take some time to thank our sponsor, Carter's. We greatly appreciate their commitment to help nurture and protect children and to build communities in which children can thrive. If you would like to get text on news and information related to your young child, sign up for our Georgia Parent Power Text Service. Sign up by texting CARE to 877-255-4254. You'll get texts such as our next Georgia Parent Power webinar. As a reminder, we will send a follow-up email with resources mentioned during the webinar and the link to our survey. QCC is a nonprofit organization, and if you would like to contribute to help us continue to provide great programs like this webinar to help every child reach their full potential, please visit us at qccdonate.org. Your contribution is appreciated. Again, thank you all for taking time to be with us today. Thank you, panelists. Thank you to the QCC team and everyone that helped to make this webinar a success. We appreciate you partnering with us today, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you and take care.